Hello, everyone. How are you today? If you can, like Sam said, write in that chat box. It's going to be on my phone. So if you can just write in there just so I can know that it's working properly. My name is Stephanie Sheeran. I'm from Long Island, New York, and I'm a trainer, PRAVANA, and a lead brand expert. I also am 36 weeks pregnant. So if you see me grabbing some water or holding my stomach, that's why. And hopefully my water doesn't break during this class. I'm a salon owner of a commissioned salon, and I also own a salon suite. So it's really great because I get to talk to many different stylists in many different points of their career. So I have some assistants who are just graduating beauty school. I have people who are literally retiring. And then I always make this joke. I have an 89-year-old who works in my salon. His name is Frank. And he does his weekly clients. He comes in, he hangs out. So I get to talk to all different stylists from all different walks of life. So I'm going to check the chat box to see if it's working. Perfect. So we have Misty, we have Dana, we have Brenda from Texas. Awesome. So today, what we're going to be going over is a lot of the whys of foiling, right? So when I say the whys of foiling, we're going to be talking about placement. We're going to be talking about why you're taking a weave, a slice, a baby light. We're going to be talking about the head shape. We're going to be talking about working smarter, not harder. We're going to be going through some of our products. We're going to be going through consultation. And then we're going to wrap everything up from there. How does that sound for you guys? If you can, write in the chat box what's one thing that you want to get out of this class today. Just so as I'm going through along the class, I can make sure that I answer those questions. I'll give you a second. Okay. First, I want to go over our tools. So everybody has tail combs, right? But what's the difference between these tail combs? One has a longer tail. This one's the longer tail. Then this one is the shorter tail. I like a longer tail comb, especially with a handle, because then I don't have to put it down every time. I don't have to like get the edge of the foil, right? So that's another little pro tip. The first thing I want to go over is placement. Okay. So as you can see here, the first form of placement I want to go over. Yeah, larger tail cone, definitely for the win. Brenda. We're going to go over horizontal. So this is a horizontal section, right? So as you guys can see, it's horizontal. What this is going to do is all of this hair is going to be laying over flat, right? So what's going to happen is if you weave it, if you slice it, if you baby light it, it's all going to be going flat over the hair. Okay? So that's horizontal. It's going to give you maximum brightness. Then, so we're going to take our tail comb. First, take your section. Like I said, this is horizontal. You want to make sure that you can read a newspaper through it and see. Look at how cheap my little PRAVANA foils are. Go in. And as I'm pulling the tail comb out, I'm pushing up with my thumb, right? Today, one of the lighteners I'm going to be using is our Pure Light Cream Lightener. Our Pure Light Cream Lightener is going to give you 9 levels of lift. That's right, I said 9 levels of lift, and it's going to help your foil stay in place because it has that nice creamy texture. I want to make sure it's fully saturated, and I'm going to flat wrap it. Okay, so it's a horizontal section. Next, I'm going to be going over a vertical section. So when you think of a vertical section, I want everyone to think of like up and down. I'm turn my mannequin head so you can see it. So vertical section is going up and down, right? So what this is going to do is create a little bit of a softer effect compared to that horizontal, which is a hard line. So taking that section, a lot of the times with a vertical section, I do it around the hairline, right? For that money piece. I'm taking my section, just lock it back up. Taking my section, making sure that it's newspaper thin, so I get that full saturation. Taking my foil, folding it over my comb. And as I am pulling out my tail comb, I'm pushing up with my thumb, so I get a hard, crisp line. I'm sure many of us have been in the situation where you take that tail comb out and then it flops. And make sure you're fully saturating. I see we have a question in the chat box. So the question is, will this class be recorded? I'm at work. Yes, this class will be recorded. So you can watch it later. And thanks for doing this while you're at work. So this is our vertical section. So vertical up and down is going to be a softer finish. Horizontal is going straight across. That's going to be maximum. And then we have diagonal, which diagonal I always like to say marries the two together. We're going to do diagonal. I do a lot of diagonal foiling because I feel like it gives you the best of both worlds. It's going to give you that maximum coverage, right, with a softer finish. So taking that section, making sure it's a newspaper thin again, and see how it's going on a diagonal. Again, I'm using our Pure Light Cream Lightener. It gives you that 9 levels of lift, and it's pretty nourishing to the hair. So as it's lifting the hair, it's nourishing at the same time, which I like. And like I said before, I like that it stays in place. So it's really convenient for when you are doing foils that aren't horizontal going up the whole head. It's going to help that foil stay in place. Making sure that it's fully saturated. Going up to that root area. And then laying another foil on top. So these are the 3 types of sections that you can take. So I shaved Deborah's head today. And just so everybody can get a better understanding, if the mannequin was too much, horizontal goes straight across. I'm just going to move this out of the way. Horizontal goes straight across. Then we have diagonal, which is marrying the two. And then we have vertical, which is more of an up and down. Does anybody have any questions on how you're taking your section before we move on? Perfect. I don't see anything in the chat box, but like Sam said before, if anybody has any questions, just throw it in there. Next, I want to go over heat zones of the scalp. So when it comes to heat zones, the nape of the neck and around the hairline is always going to be the most fragile, right? So normally the nape of the neck stays on the longest of processing time. Around the hairline, right, we have baby hair. I definitely have pregnancy hair, so my hair definitely lifts differently than it did before. You want to make sure that when you're going around the hairline and the perimeter, that you're taking into account how long it's going to stay on, and on top of it, that it's a more fragile hair, right? Then we have our occipital. So in our occipital, what can happen sometimes is we have foils on the top and foils on the bottom, right? So what happens is that heat gets compacted. So it lifts a little bit quicker. So you just want to make sure that you're always aware of this. Then we have our crown, which in my opinion takes the longest to lift because there's no foils really in front of it or behind it that are help containing that heat. It really is just a foil. Okay? So why we use foils is because we want to create a little bit of an environment. So in that environment, what happens is their body heat plus the foil equals their lift. And when you have a more consistent foil, you're going to have more consistent lift and results. Does anybody have any questions on that? Nope. Okay. Next, what we're going to go over is the type of techniques. So the first one we're going to do, and this mannequin has been through a lot, so bear with her, is a slice. A slice is going to give you maximum coverage and boldness. So you can really see and understand these. I'm going to take them all going horizontal. So like I said, this is horizontal. So flat across. When you're slicing someone's head, it's because you want that maximum boldness, right? And that brightness. So what you're going to do is take a fine section so you can see a newspaper through it. And why I keep repeating that is because it's so important to fully saturate. So slicing. This is going to give you that bold brightness. And when you're taking a slice, you're taking every single strand, right, going across. So there's nothing to diffuse that line. There's nothing to give you like a high and a low. It's all bright. Flat wrapping again. I'm just sealing those ends. Next, what I'm going to take is a weave. Now, when you're doing a weave, you want to make sure that you're doing a scooping motion. And I'll show you what I mean by that. You want to see windows in the hair, is what I was always taught. So without doing it on the mannequin, when you're doing a weave, think of scooping. So going up, down, right? Because you want to see that brightness, then depth, brightness, then depth, all right next to each other. So creating a high and a low in a single step. So taking that fine section. You guys see my mannequin okay? Now we're going to go in and do, like I said, the scooping. So up, down, up, down, up. I want you guys to really see the windows that I'm talking about. So can you guys see the windows and how it's going to be brightness, then her natural, so diffused or low light, the brightness, then the diffused or low light, and the brightness again. Look at my foils. Again, I'm going in with our cream lightener. Other way. Now, when you're foiling, you can I always like to bend the foil with my tail comb to give me that insurance policy if I have to go back in and stop some bleeding, right? You want to make sure so you can go in and really lock it in, right? So if I go back into our slice, right? I can lift up, see that little lip? And I can go back in and tuck and pull out. Just to help you give you that insurance policy, especially if you're doing like a touch up in between or if you're glazing in between, it kind of helps you out. So we did a slice, a weave, and now we're going to do a baby light. So when you're doing a baby light or a micro stitch, it's always going to be, think of a tapping motion. So think of like tap, 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 because what's happening is we want to get basically single strands of the natural hair to diffuse that line. So you're still going to get a pretty powerful maximum coverage on this, but at the same time, it's going to be more diffused compared to a slice, but a little bit more bright than a weave. So I'm going to take again my section. This whole class is mastering foiling, and I really want everyone to understand the whys so then you can detect a picture, right? And figure out, oh, that's why we do this. This is the placement on that.
Steph, there's a question in the chat.
Mhm.
Dana's asking, do you flat wrap to avoid creasing the product inside the foil?
Yes. So why you flat wrap is because we're trying to create an environment for this foil, right? For this lightener. If I went in and origami the foil up, right? Like this, I'm being very dramatic. But if you were like this, then what would happen? Your lightener has nowhere to expand to. And then you have bleeding, you're going to get inconsistent lightening. So you're wherever there's a bend, the lightener is also bending. And you're not going to get even consistent saturation. So that's why we always recommend to flat wrap. Thanks for your question. I'm going to go in with the baby light and I'm going to tap. So think of tapping motion. Don't overthink it. Like some people get really crazy. In my head, I just think of like tap, 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 tap a million times. So see how it's more of a diffused line? Going back in, folding over my foil so I have that insurance policy, right? So I can go back in, check, holding it with my fist like this and pushing up with my thumb at the same time. So as it's going through the hair, it's going to make this nice, crisp, like honestly satisfying foil. And like I keep repeating, I love using our cream lightener because it just makes everything stay in place. And it gives me that 9 levels of lift all at the same time and is nourishing. So for me, it's kind of like an all-in-one. So making sure that's fully saturated. You want it to look like sour cream. Flat wrapping and just sealing those ends. So we did a slice, which is going to give you that maximum boldness. So taking every hair in that section. Then we did a weave, which think of scooping. So high, low, right? So scooping and those windows. We just finished a baby light, and that's a tapping motion, and that's going to be a diffused maximum coverage, right? Because every other strand is really getting in there. Next we have is teasy lights, which do you guys feel like a lot of clients are coming in wanting a more lived in look, or do you think we're going back to the traditional foil? Write it in the chat what you guys think. So I'm going to be doing those same 3 types of foils, but I'm going to be doing them as a teasy light. And what that means is you're going to tease the hair. So if you're taking a slice, right, we're going to take our section. You're going to lift the hair up. The more you tease, the less lightness is going to come from this. So let me explain more. So if I tease once, right, all of this is going to be lighter, right? Because that's where I'm going to put my lightener. If I keep teasing, that means that there's going to be less hair for me to lighten. So if somebody brings you in a look, right, that is very soft and sun-kissed, the more you tease, the softer and the more subtle that look is going to be. So we took a slice, so that maximum coverage, right? We teased it up because this hair that's in the tease is not going to get lightened. Why we're putting it in a foil and we call it a teasy light is because we want to create that environment where one, it's controlled, right? So we're controlling the heat because it's encapsulated, compared to open air lightning is just open air. So there's no control of it, right? Let's say if that client is running hot, if the air is cranking in the salon, it's not going to help you, right? Compared to this is going to give you that coverage. So I want everyone to always think, the more you tease, the more diffused it's going to be. So the root is going to be darker and then it's going into a lighter color. So we did that with the slice. Now we're going to do that same thing with a weave. So taking that fine section again, because we want to make sure we get full saturation. You can read a newspaper through it, right? And we're going to be doing a weave. So what's a weave again? Is those windows. So up, down, up, down, up, down, right? So creating those windows. So now what's going to happen when we do this type of teasy light with the weave is we're going to tease, right? But you have to remember, in each of those windows is a low lighter than natural. So it's going to be even softer. Check in the chat box to make sure nobody has any questions. What do you guys think? Do you think that traditional foils are coming back, or do you think more teasy light like lived-in looks? And I'm just painting it up, right up into that tease, going all the way down. What's the difference between teasing and using a dryer to remove? Okay, so the question is, what is the difference between teasing and using a dryer to remove the hair? So air touch is a completely different technique because it's getting out every single little strand, right? Teasing is just going to take what's in the tease and move it up. So air touch, what I personally do behind the chair is only really do that on people who have like damaged hair. But it's totally up to you as a stylist. If air touch is your thing and that's what you're known for, go for it. It's still going to give you a very diffused line. Did that answer your question? Okay, perfect. And last but not least, we're going to be doing a baby light, teasy light. So we're going to take the fine section, making sure we can see through it. So it's newspaper thin. Baby light equals a tapping motion. So tap, 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 tap. She doesn't have a lot of hair up here, but then teasing. And now remember, the more you tease, the less hair you have to lighten. So when you're doing a baby light like this, if I kept teasing, she's really not going to have that much hair. to lighten. So it's going to be a soft, subtle effect. So when you see a picture where it looks very diffused at the root, and when I say diffuse, it's more of a transition compared to if they show you a darker root and lighter. So if you just see a solid darker root, that's going to be a shadow root, right? If you see more of a gradient effect, it's probably a TC light or some sort of a TC light. So again, making sure that my fist is locking the hair down. I'm pushing up with my thumb and coming out and using my lightener to anchor it into place. I'm flat wrapping the foil because we want to make sure that we get nice, even, consistent lip. Does anybody have any questions? So just to recap so far, we went over why you take a horizontal section, why you take a diagonal and a vertical. We did a slice, a weave, and a baby light. And then we did a slice teasy light, a sliced weave, and a sliced baby light. Gonna get these out of the way. So my clientele, for the most part, is touch-ups and blonding. I live in New York. I work 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and I do double book. So I need very efficient, practical, full highlighting techniques, right? Because we all know time is money. So I'm going to show you, which most people struggle with, is the back of the head, right? They want to go in and just stack foils on top of each other. You can use your placement more efficiently with less foils, which means less product, more time, so you're making more money. How does that sound to everybody? Just mixing up my lightener. So this is the Pure Light Ultra Lightener. So this gives you 9 levels of lift and has split ending technology inside of it. So as it's lifting the hair, it's mending those split ends at the same time. Okay. Always think when you're lifting someone's hair, right? When you're using those foils, you want to make sure where they want to see the brightness. So if you're doing a face frame, right, they want to see the brightness around here. Or even recently with my face frames, I've been going all the way around. So when they move their hair forward, they have the lightness under here. So they feel brighter, right? So just like makeup, how we highlight certain things and contour others, think of the same thing when you're on the head and the head shape. So I'm going to pull this up, ball Deborah. We're going to do all slices just so you guys can see. We're going to do 2 slices on a diagonal on each side. So when that hair falls, it's going to fall forward, and then one going across. And then going up in a V shape again, and then one going across, up in a V shape, and then one going across, and going up until we reach the crown. So why I purposely left the crown out is because it really depends on the look that they're going for. You can keep doing this up into the crown, right? If they want a softer effect and leave it as a halo, or if they want that maximum brightness, you're going to take over their part, right? If they want the more ribbon effect, you're going to take this section, right, and going on verticals. So that's why I left this out. This is really just for the back of the head so you can have a full, quick, easy technique. How does that guy sound? How does that sound? Sorry. So you can put more foils or less foils in depending on the client, right? So if they want to be super bright, you can pack them in more and use slices or a teasy light slice. My whole point of showing you guys this is so you can understand the whys of what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going in on a diagonal. And now you want to almost think of like the old school bricklay a little bit, but with V's, because where every single foil is ending, another one is kind of beginning. So going in, and don't be afraid to ask your clients to move their head in certain positions. With our Pure Light Ultra Lightener, I really do also use this lightener a lot because it's mixed 1 to 2. So it has a creamier consistency compared to other lighteners. And it's still giving that 9 levels of lift and has that split ending technology inside of it. Make sure that's locked in good. So when it comes to leaving out hair in between, the bigger your sections are in between, the more depth you're going to have. Compared to if it's closer together, then there's going to be less depth and more brightness. It's easier if you see this guys this way. So see how much hair I'm leaving in between? So she's going to have a decent amount of depth in here. If your client always puts their hair up, you would take less of a thick section. Which is a great add-on service if you just do like a face frame and then just do around their hairline back here. They're going to think that they got like a full head. And it only took you like 15 to 10 minutes. So going up to that root, making sure it's fully saturated. And also, do you notice how I'm not like spaghettiing the hair? Because you want more even lift. So going back to that question about flat wrapping stops any creases from happening. It also makes it so the hair can lay more evenly. The ends you can just put to the side, but you don't want to like squiggle them up like spaghetti. Okay, now I'm going to do the other side. Does anybody have any questions so far? Check the chat box. Okay, perfect. I'm going to keep going alongside the head. And now you have to remember everyone's head shape is different, right? Have you ever seen people where their hairline in the back is super small and then other ones are super wide? It's just how their hairline lays. So that's when you can use the verbiage to your client saying, I do custom foiling, because you are doing custom foiling. You're specifically tailoring that look to them. And that elevates your service, right? Just so you guys can see, I'm taking my first foil on that side. So it's going to be like a V. So when they pick their hair up, they're going to see that lightness. So taking my slice, making sure that my section is nice and thin, so I get nice saturation, right? Because what happens when you take too thick of a slice is your lightener is not going to be able to penetrate all the way through. See, like the ultra lightener also stays in place like the cream lightener. Going all the way down, making sure nothing's spaghettiing in there. Do you all feel like you're getting the whys of what you're doing now compared to just knowing how to do something? I feel like that was always a big thing for me. I always want to know why something reacts or does the things that it does. Okay, so taking another fine section, going on that V again, so that diagonal. So it's going to give us that in between of a diffused line, right? But still that maximum coverage compared to if you took just the straight horizontal. Painting it on. So all our lighteners are up to 55 minutes, which is nice for booking. Like I said, time is money. So what I like to do is do my foils, go in and do my touch-up, and by the time that my touch-up is done processing, it's all done. Now we have our V done, like that. You guys can see on this section, it's done. Now we want to marry those two sections together. Right, you can almost see in the head where you should be connecting. So connect here to here, right? And this is going to lay over all of this. I always tell everybody too, when you overfoil, everything is going to look the same, right? Because it's almost too much brightness. If you have a black wall next to a white wall and a black wall next to, a black wall next to a white wall and a white wall next to a cream wall, which one is going to look brighter? The white wall next to the black wall, because there's more contrast there. So having those pockets of depth going throughout the head is going to make your highlights look brighter. If you're a makeup person, always think of highlighting or contouring, right? So you want to accentuate or create depth. Now you can do the same placement with any type of foil, meaning you can do it with a slice, a teasy slice. You can do it with a baby light going all throughout the head, and they're all going to give you different results. Does anybody have any questions? Do you guys feel like you'll use this technique behind the chair? Looking at the chat box, see who answers. So again, we're back at our V. So a V going this way and a V going that way, right? So what the V is going to do is be that diagonal foil. So we have the diagonal foil, then we have our depth underneath. Going in, we have our nice long tail comb, our bend over insurance policy. Making that nice crisp line. Going all the way down. I'm going to do this last foil on the other side, and then I want to move on. Before I move on after this foil, does anybody have any questions so far? Going all the way down, fully saturating. You want to make sure it looks like sour cream. Okay, we have a question in the chat box. It says, do you change your volume of developer when moving around the head? So it really depends on your timing. I foil fairly quickly. To be honest, I'm a little spoiled. I have an assistant handing me my foils most of the time. And I use 20 volume throughout the whole head. If you're somebody who's just starting out or somebody who's a little bit slower at foiling, then I would change your developer based on your speed. So like how we were talking about before, the nape of the neck normally processes the quickest all around the hairline. So you can start with a 10 volume there and then work your way up as you get into the crown. Then maybe do like your 20 or your 30. Did that answer your question? So this next foil, I really want to show you about saturation and why it's so important. Saturation is so important because when you saturate the hair with the lightener, it's going all the way through. And that's the difference between like a balayage and like a foilage, I'll say. So pretend my hand, my arm, is a piece of hair, right? If I just put that lightener on the top, what's going to happen? Only the lightener and the hair on the top is going to lift. Compared to when you fully saturate, you're getting all of that hair to lighten. So full saturation matters so much because you want to get the maximum lift that you want. It's not a balayage. Balayage literally means to sweep in French. So you want to make sure you're taking that fine section again. She doesn't have that much hair here. We're going to take a little bit more. That fine section again, so your product can work for you, not against you, right? So when you take too thick of a section, it's not going to get all the way through that saturation. So when you're saturating your foil, you want to make sure that it looks like sour cream. You really want to make sure that you're getting in there and you have no dry spots. You want to make sure it's fully saturated because one, when it's fully saturated, it definitely helps not only your lightening, but it's going to give you more even, consistent results. Another thing with saturation that matters a lot is how you mix your product. So when you're mixing your product, we all give recommendations, right? When you're using this, you want to make sure, and it says it literally on the back, I want to make sure I point to it. It's mixed 1 to 2 on a scale. When you're mixing Pure Light Cream Lightener, it's also mixed 1 to 2 on a scale, and this also has it on the back. And the same, and Pure Light Power Lightener is mixed 1 to 3. So 1 part Pure Light Power Lightener to 3 parts developer. Why this is so important is because you want to work with your product. So if you're not using the product how it was made to be used, then you're going to get inconsistent results. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. So the next thing I want to do is the difference between like a foilage and the traditional. So like I said, we did the traditional in the beginning. So that's the slice, the weave, and the baby light. And then we did teasy lights. And now like, what's the difference between a teasy light and a foilage? The difference is one has tease in it, the other does not. So I'm just going to take 2 horizontal sections on the top so you guys can really see what I'm talking about. So a foilage you're doing is because you want to contain the heat. When you do open air lightning, there's nothing besides the outside elements of the temperature to lift this hair. When you put hair into a foil, it's going to create an environment where it can heat up. So it's taking your client's body heat, the outside heat, and what's compacted into that foil. That's why going back to that question about why do you flat wrap is because we want that even consistency. So when you're doing a foliage, it's the same rules that apply. You want to take a pretty fine section. It doesn't have to be as fine because as you would our traditional foil is because you don't want that lightener to penetrate all the way through the whole head. You guys see my mannequin okay? So do you see the size of that section? So it's still, you can still see my hand through it, but it's a little bit thicker than what we were taking before. You're going to take your foil, just lift her back up. And think if you were doing a balayage, but just in a foil. So you want to go in and paint. You want to start lower and work your way up. When you're doing a foliage, your saturation is going to be more focused at the bottom because a foliage, right, you want it to be very diffused. So the saturation is really going to be all at the ends, right? You don't want to spaghetti it, so we're just going to take these and move them over. If you have to, she really doesn't have that much hair, but put 2 foils so it lays flatter. You can do that also. Do you see how it's light saturation into heavy saturation? So it's going to be lighter lift to heavier lift. And we're putting it in the foil to contain that heat so we get that coverage. Okay? Does anybody have any questions on anything we went over? Checking the chat box. Perfect. Just going to move my mannequin. Okay. I believe that the most important part of any service and anything that sets you apart from somebody else is your consultation. So it's where are you going? How far are you getting to get there? What obstacles are in the way? And what do you do to get over those obstacles, right? So in my salon, we have little client cards. This is them. They're nothing fancy. I made them on Vistaprint. You can ask whatever questions that you would like for your business. So RSA, how did you hear about us? Did anybody refer you? So building your business at the same time. How long have you had your current hairstyle? Give me your hair's past 10 years experience. What products do you use on your hair? What's your maintenance? What's your goal for this visit? So sometimes they might have a goal, but it might take 1 or 2 visits. So you need to have that expectation, right? Their price range, because you always want to be honest, and what products you recommend. And then in the back, we have like what their formula was. They're like a fun fact about them. So when it comes to obstacles, I'm going to move the tray over. We're going to do a little science experiment, like a little Bill Nye. Can you guys see okay? Sometimes what happens with different obstacles, right, is the hair can be overly porous. And what happens when hair is overly porous, it doesn't always absorb, right? So I have a wet sponge here, right? So you see the wet sponge? When I go to put this wet sponge back in the water, it's not going to be able to absorb as much compared to when I take this dry sponge, it's going to absorb more because it's more porous. There's more for it to pick up on, right? So there's more for it to suck in. So porosity can be an issue, and those are okay. You just have to know about them and how to treat them to go forward. When you're trying to figure out those obstacles, you want to make sure that if someone's hair is super damaged or overly porous, that you're using the right tools. So for example, let's say if I went to go across the street, if I go 20 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour, which one am I less likely to get into an accident? it's going to be 20 miles an hour, right? So hopefully you guys can see this. Come on, come out. And we'll click it. So you're 20. Pretend this is 20 volume, and then this is your 30 volume. So see how the 20 volume is like low and slow? 30 is a little chaotic. Now if I can put enough Alka-Seltzer packets in there, you'll see how 40 is definitely the most chaotic. See the difference? So you have more control with the 20 than when you do the 40. So that's why consultation is so important, because you need to know where you're starting from to know where you're going, and then knowing your tools in between. My last but not least, and I feel like this has been an issue for me behind the chair, is during those consultations, a lot of our clients are taking those GLP-1s, those weight loss pills, which is great for them, right? But if you only see that person twice a year, then their hair is going to be completely different from the last time. So making sure you take that into account, ask them if they've had more hair loss lately, what's their diet like? No, and you don't have to straight up ask them if they're taking a GLP-1, but just ask them like, hey, are you taking any new medicine? Because blood thinners can do the same thing. I know for sure hormones, my hair does not look the same as it did before I was pregnant. Now during I'm pregnant, I'm sure postpartum it's going to be all different. So making sure you have that really honest conversation with your client goes a long way, because they're going to remember the honesty that you had for them and how you wanted them to have the best results, right? With the healthiest hair that they could. Does anyone have any questions on anything that we went over today before we wrap up? For any questions? Check the chat box. Okay. So just to recap, we went over the different ways to take a section, the different types of foils. We did some PK throughout the entire class. We went over how to use your tools, some consultation, foilage versus traditional, and a little bit of science behind it. So I just want to thank everybody for coming to my class today. If you can, follow me, Steph_Shear on Instagram, and make sure you're checking out Pravana.com for any boot camps coming up. I think Ashley has the next one. She's a trainer at Pravana. And make sure you're following Pravana on Instagram. So thanks for coming to our class today.
Thank you so much, Steph, and thank you to everyone for joining us. As a reminder, this class has been recorded, so feel free to watch it as many times as you would like. And we hope to see you on our next class. Thank you.